Guys, nobody panic. This is not my official best books of the year video. That is coming very, very soon. But as fantasy romance or romantasy has become such an oversaturated genre over the last few years, I thought that I would let you guys know which of the 2025 romantasy releases are actually worth your time. Now, I haven't read all of them. I'm not professing to have read all of them, but I do feel in the last few years, I've had maybe one book from the genre make my top books of the year list. And I think this year, my top 3 is going to be dominated by romantasy reads. Now, when it comes to my best books of the year, not all of them are 2025 releases. They are just the books that I have read within the last 12 months. However, quite a few of the books that I have read in 2025 have also been released this year. So I thought that this was a really good time to check in and let you guys know my top 5 romantasy releases of the last 12 months. Now, if you are a romantasy fan, I did do a little project at the beginning of this year called the Romantasy Rundown, where I read the first 12 months of Fairy Loot's Romantasy subscription. So I have actually read a lot of fantasy romance this year, but for that project a lot of them were 2024 releases. But if you want more recommendations, then I would definitely recommend you go ahead and check out that project. It's in 5 parts. I ran them back to back, and it's a really comprehensive guide to the first year of that Fairy Loot subscription. All of the books that I'm going to be recommending to you guys today, as always, are either 4 or 5-star reads for me, and I have only had 7 5-star ratings for the entirety of 2025. So I am more shocked than anyone that almost half of those come from the romantasy genre. So I'm going to be starting, I guess, with my 4-star reads, and I'm pretty sure one of the ones that I read towards the beginning of this year was Terror at the Gates by Scarlett St. Clair. I received an arc of this from Source Books. Thank you so much to Source Books for that, because I'm not sure I would have prioritized this otherwise. I do enjoy Scarlett St. Clair. I've read the first 2 books in her Hades and Persephone series, and I enjoy them, but they are not my favorite. And this one is a bit of an urban fantasy, and I do like urban fantasy in very specific instances, and by specific instances I mean House of Earth and Blood. But your typical classic urban fantasy series, the ones that were really, really popular in like the year 2000 to 2010, not really for me. So I was trepidatious going into this, but I loved it. So this one is following a young woman called Lilith, and it is set in this city that is separated into different sections, and she is from the top section of this city from a very powerful family. However, she is rebelling a little bit. This is a heavily religious society, and I'm pretty sure that it does not specifically mention Christianity anywhere, but to me the connotations were pretty obvious. The world that this is set in, or the city that it's set in, is called Eden, for instance, and she is rebelling. She has had a bad experience with the church. This book heavily deals with religious trauma, and so she has gone to the underworld of this city, which is called Nineveh, where she is trying to make a name for herself, make a living for herself, knowing full well that her father is eventually going to be calling her back to the place where she belongs in this society to be married off, and she's very much trying to fight against this and prove to her family that she doesn't need this legacy, like she can live on her own. Now, the man who actually runs the underground of this city is called Zahariev, and he has a little bit of a soft spot for Lilith, and she is a little bit of a thief. She has sticky fingers, and one day she steals this dagger from a man, and she takes it to the fence that she normally sells her stolen goods to, and when this man touches this dagger, he dies. Now, she's very confused because when she touched it, she was absolutely fine. So she has to enlist Zahariev, who is trying his best to keep Lilith out of trouble, but he has to assist her in getting to the bottom of what this dagger means, because it does seem to be incredibly dangerous, and no matter what Lilith does, she can't get rid of it. It keeps coming straight back to her. So obviously I am a big fan of House of Earth and Blood. I love the world that Sarah J. Maas created in that series, and I'm not so much a fan of old school urban fantasy. It doesn't really do it for me. I think mainly due to the episodic nature of the installments in those kinds of series, which was a very popular format back in the day that just doesn't quite work for me. But what I really loved about Terror at the Gates is that I felt like it perfectly blends the conventions of modern romantasy, modern fantasy romance series like the Crescent City series by Sarah J. Maas with the old school urban fantasy fantasy genre, this is like House of Earth and Blood meets the Fever series by Karen Marie Monin. And that really worked for me because I do think it is the specific format and structure and some of the conventions of the urban fantasy genre from those series that originated like 20 years ago that put me off a little bit. So containing some of the hallmarks of that people really love about the genre, but modernizing it and blending it with common themes and tropes that we see and love today really, really worked for me. I thought that the sexual tension between Lilith and Zahariev was top tier, and I also really, really loved the discussions of religion that we have in here. Like I said, Christianity is never explicitly mentioned, but I do feel like this is very much a representative of Christianity, or at least a very popular modern day monotheistic religion. And I really loved the discussions of abuse of power and manipulation that does happen within the church. One of my favorite books of the year, and very different tonally to Terror at the Gates, is The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. Now, I have read One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig and I really enjoyed it. So I was expecting to enjoy this one as well, but I did not expect this to sweep me away. So what I really love about Rachel Gillig is that I feel like in both of the different worlds that I've read from her, she presents very common, very well loved themes and tropes, but in a completely unique way. I think that currently she is one of the most creative popular fantasy authors that we have. I've read so many books over the last couple of years that are just recycled, regurgitated versions of works that are very popular by other authors. But what I feel like Rachel Gillig is doing is something completely different, completely unique, while still giving us those tried and tested staples of the genre that we know and love. So The Night and the Moth follows a diviner called Sybil who lives in this crumbling old cathedral. She was taken from her home. She was a foundling, so like an orphan, when she was a child, and she was taken to this cathedral along with, I think, 5 other girls. As diviners, they have to give 10 years of service to this cathedral and then they will be free to go and live their lives as they please. And our 6 diviners are all reaching the end of their 10-year tenure. These girls are very close, obviously. They've grown up together. The only comfort that they have really ever known in their life has come from each other, as well as the abbess that is the keeper of this cathedral. And so they have spent a lot of time dreaming about their future and how they're going to enjoy their freedom together. Now, the way that divining is performed in here is especially brutal. These girls are drowned, they're held underwater, and the dreams that they have, or the hallucinations when they come back into consciousness, are the divinations that are presented to whoever it is that has requested the prophecy. So the new king of the land comes to the cathedral, which is tradition, to receive a divination that will foretell how his rule will go. Like, will it be successful? Will it not? And Sybil is the one who is asked to perform his divination. And this is how she comes across our male main character in here, who is Roderick, the heretical knight. Now, he's just kind of going along with this because it's something that is done, it's tradition, but he does not believe in this process of divination that is essentially our main character's entire life. So they start verbally sparring almost immediately because Sybil is a little bit of a rebellious diviner. However, she does have to come and ask this king for help, as well as the heretical knight Roderick, when the diviners start to go missing one by one, and she desperately wants to know what has happened to these girls that she loves so much, who are her entire world. And this forces her to step outside of this cathedral for the first time and have to explore this world that she has absolutely no knowledge of. And accompanying her on this journey, she has one of the cathedral's gargoyles, which are gargoyles as we think of them, but they have come to life and they are the protectors of the diviners. However, there is something a little bit odd about the one that Sybil takes with her. He's not as serious as the rest of the gargoyles, and he provides the majority of the humor for this book. Now, I expected this to be a very like dark, eerie, gothic book tonally, and we do definitely have elements of that throughout here, but what I did not expect was the humor. Like, when you start this book, you find out that the characters have a little bit of a more modern style of dialogue than I expected, because I really did think that this was going to lean on the gloomy side of things. But our main character Sybil, she is a firecracker. Her and her sisters have been sneaking out of this cathedral. They've been for nights on the town. They've been dallying with the visitors at the cathedral and having having a grand old time. And Sybil, I feel like, takes her job the most seriously of her sisters, but she is still sometimes willing to test those boundaries. The gargoyle that accompanies Sybil stole my heart. He calls everybody Bartholomew, and he is not quite sarcastic. I want to say he has a childlike wonder about him that causes him to ask somewhat very stupid or blunt questions in really unfortunate circumstances that come across as humorous throughout here. And his character was one of the high points of this series for me. Now, in terms of the chemistry that we had between our two main characters, I actually did not feel it for quite some time. I was wondering how we were going to get around to a position of romance in here, and I was somewhat disappointed because based on their interactions throughout the first part of this book, I did not think I was going to be vibing with it. However, the dialogue style in this book, when it comes to those romantic declarations, really harken back to classic romantic gothic literature like Wuthering Heights, with this overly dramatic and emotionally charged language that heightened the sense of yearning and longing we had throughout here and stole my heart, honestly. That was the moment when we started to get to these big declarations of emotion that the characters have been suppressing for most of the book, that I absolutely fell in love with this one. I was already excited for this because I had enjoyed what I read from Rachel Gillig before, but I'm so excited for the sequel to this one and also to see what Rachel Gillig comes up with next. So I did discover a new favorite fantasy romance author in 2025. I did not give either of the two books I read 5 stars, but I did give them very high 4s, and that is LJ Andrews. So I have a cheat book in here because I'm going to recommend 2 LJ Andrews books in this video. The first one is a 2025 release. The second one is an indie series that was published, I think, last year, but has been traditionally published this year. But the solid 2025 release was part of the Fairly Romantasy subscription, and that is Broken Souls and Bones by LJ Andrews. So this one centers around Norse mythology, and we are following a woman who has a unique power. I think she is a bone melder. She is a melder gifted in the 3 magical crafts of bone, blood, and soul, and this means that she can use all of these powers in conjunction to do something that the individual crafters, the ones who can only use bone, blood, or soul, cannot achieve. And she has been keeping this power a secret because I'm pretty sure she's an orphan, because she knows that if the king finds out, she will have to go and serve him and use her gift to achieve his needs, and that's something that she doesn't want. But one day, Rowan Ashwood, who is one of the king's soldiers, comes to the village where our main character lives, and he suspects that she is this rare melder, and he does indeed take her back to the king, who keeps her in this kind of gilded prison where she's treated very well because of her position, but she actually just really does not want to be there. And we start to see that there are some differences of opinion on melders in this world. There are some countries that hate them and want to kill them, and they are constantly attacking this country where the main character now lives to rid the king of this power that they think is very dangerous. And throughout the course of this book, the main character starts to grow closer to this silent soldier that was the one who took her from her village and delivered her to the king in the first place. So the reason why I gave this 4 stars and not 5 is because I felt like I didn't quite understand the magic system in here. I don't understand why our main character does what she does when it feels like it should be something that like the bone melders do, because from what I remember, she melds bone together, but that to me feels like something that a regular bone melder should do, if that makes sense. Like, I didn't quite understand why the different types of melder had the specific powers that they had, and I would have liked a little bit more information on that. But what I did love, and what is consistent through the LJ Andrews books that I've read, is the sexual tension between our main character and our love interest. Now, the love interest, Roark Ashwood, he cannot speak. He had an accident when he was a kid, and he just appeared kind of at the gates of this kingdom. He's from a different place, and the prince of this kingdom took pity on him and brought him in. And I really loved the inclusion, the representation in here of a main character that cannot speak. And we also have a sign language within this world that has been developed by the prince and Roark to be able to help Roark to communicate, and our main character kind of starts to learn that and pick that up so that she can also communicate with him. And that is something that I haven't seen in Romantasy before, especially such popular, like mainstream romantasy that I very much appreciated. Like I said, the sexual tension was fire. I like the world that LJ Andrews has created, and I'm pretty sure that all of her series are set in the same world. The other one I'm going to recommend is definitely a spin-off from another one of her series that's still indie published, but I do think that this also takes place in the same world because the other series does very briefly mention melders, so I find that to be very interesting as well. I do think that the plot and the ending of this, the way that things started to come together, was not as seamless as I like. The plot reveal that we kind of have was something that I had guessed, but then based on all of the information we'd received so far, didn't really make sense to me. And so I would have liked those things to be a little bit neater, the magic system to be a little bit cleaner. But if you're looking for a strong romantic connection, like a good romance with a decent fantasy world, would definitely recommend LJ Andrews. And the other book that I read from LJ Andrews, I don't know if I liked it a little bit more. I think I actually liked them equally, but I do think that the plot and the world is a little bit stronger in the Everking. So this one is the first book in the Eversea series. I believe it is going to be a 6-book series. 3 of the books are published so far, and the 4th one is going to be released in, I think, autumn 2026. The first 2 books are a duology following the same couple. Book 3 is a standalone, and I think book 4 is another standalone romance, all I'm assuming with an interconnected plot. And this is also a spin-off series to, I think, LJ Andrews' Broken Kingdom series, which follows the parents of a lot of the characters that we see within this series and the original war that kind of spurs on the events of this book. So in this one, our main character is the daughter of the king and queen of the Land Fae, and when she was a kid, they had the Everking imprisoned, and he is the king of the Sea Fae, and he was a child at the time, so was she. Her father took a kernel of his father's power, and since then the Everking has been trapped in the sea. He cannot make it to land, and he really wants to get that kernel of his father's power back because there is a plague decimating his lands, and he believes if he receives this power, it will be the cure that he needs to heal the lands and be able to give his people like peace and prosperity. So our main character accidentally unlocks the prison that is keeping the Everking in the seas, and he comes to land unable to find this kernel. He takes the main character hostage, assuming that her father will then come and give him the kernel of power in exchange for his daughter. However, we find out in the prologue that kernel of power does not exist anymore, and the main character has kind of absorbed that power accidentally. So when she starts to travel with him, he realizes that this kernel of power is not the answer to his problems, and they have to team up to try and get to the bottom of what is actually plaguing his lands. Once again, the sexual tension in here was fire, and I do think that the way that this is explained, the world building and the plot, is a lot more seamless and clean than it is in Broken Souls and Bones. We had a lot of tension in here, a lot of plot twists, a lot of betrayals, which is something that I do typically really enjoy. Trust me guys, if you have a similar taste to me in fantasy romance, which I know a lot of you guys do, then LJ Andrews is going to be an author that you do not regret. One of the best authors, like indie authors that were hyped from Book Talk, that I have read in recent years, and I'm so excited to explore the rest of LJ Andrews' work. And then the final book that I have to recommend to you guys is my most recent 5-star read of 2025, and that is Shield of Sparrows by Devney Perry. This is one that was recommended to me a lot. Every time I've mentioned this book, there's at least one person in my comments saying you are going to love Shield of Sparrows. But you know, sometimes we take those recommendations with a pinch of salt, because I have been burned before, trust me. But I had so many people saying that I was going to love this one that I did actually start to believe it. Devney Perry is traditionally a contemporary romance author. I think she's also written some romantic suspense, but this is her first fantasy novel, so I truly did not know what to expect, but this blew me away. Now, I wouldn't say that it's Rachel Gillig levels of unique, but something that I did really appreciate that Devney Perry did in this book is once again presented us with all of those common tropes and themes. Like, this synopsis of this book is a very generic romancy synopsis, but she's added enough new, fresh elements into this that it still has all of those things that I've read time and time again and adored. sword executed in a way that I like to see them executed, but with something that is unique to this series as well. So this one is set in a world where there are monsters, and every generation these huge, like truly enormous eagle style monsters fly over the land and absolutely decimate it. They kill everyone they come into contact with, they destroy towns, they decimate cities, and so this is something that the world is always like striving to prepare for. And to help the humans survive this migration, they have put together the Shield of Sparrows, which is a treaty between I think the 5 countries of the world that means that they are not allowed to go to war against each other. And to strengthen the bonds of this treaty, every generation one of the princes and princesses of one of the countries is sent to marry another one to keep the allegiances between the countries strong. So our main character is not supposed to be the princess that fulfills this treaty. It's supposed to be her younger sister, who has been trained for this role her entire life. And the king is wanting to speed this marriage along. He's wanting to strengthen these alliances immediately because he has his own agenda. And so he invites a delegation from this other country that his like daughter is betrothed to the prince of, and asks them to slay some monsters. They're like these massive, huge sea eels. And he tells this other country, like, these are getting out of hand and can you help us control them? So this delegation comes to the country and they present them with 7 adult female monsters, like dead monsters. And this means that this delegation can now choose their own bride price because of this ancient stipulation in law that the deaths of 7 adult female monsters is enough to destroy the like reproductive chain in a way that will stop these monsters from harassing the shores of this country. So the delegation, the prince of this country, chooses our main character as his bride prize instead, and the king is furious because he has been training his other daughter her entire life to be a spy and assassin, to infiltrate this land through marriage and to tell him how to get to their fabled capital city, and also to kill the guardian, who is this legendary monster hunter. So our main character now has to do this, and she is completely unequipped for this task. She has been forgotten her entire life. She is not trained in any way, shape or form, but she takes on this task because she loves her family, and she goes to this land with her lady's maids. And when she is there, she discovers that the people of this world, like, they're not so bad. They have their own struggles going on. There is something really wrong with the monsters of this world that is causing them to attack a lot more frequently and with a lot more aggression than they ever have before. And she really sympathizes with these people. And then on top of that, she has her own conflicts going on because she is not attracted to the man who is now her husband, the crown prince of this country, but she consistently feels herself drawn to this legendary monster hunter, the Guardian, even though she's married to another man. So the setup of this story is actually something that I've seen done before, and it reminded me a lot of The Bridge Kingdom by Danielle L. Jensen, which is another series that I really enjoy. So like I said, Devney Perry in a lot of ways in this book is not doing anything especially unique, but what I feel like she does is takes these building blocks that we've seen in series that we've loved before, and she doesn't just replicate them, she doesn't just plagiarize them, which I have seen done before. She takes these little nuggets and she builds it into something unique. The monsters in this world are very similar to real animals that we have, and they do have regular animals in this world as well, but some of them, like there is a Tarkin that is very similar to a tiger, they have one reminiscent of a lion, they have barrel wolves in here, which obviously are very similar to wolves, but they all have like this reptilian scaly skin as well as some fur and other differences from animals, and they're more of a magical creature in this world. Now I do believe that the author was inspired by The Witcher when creating these monsters, but I also feel like they reminded me a lot of the robot dinosaurs in Horizon Zero Dawn, which is a PlayStation game, in that they are seen as quite normal by the main characters, but they are also like a little bit of an odd addition to this world. Now in Horizon Zero Dawn, they are very much like, it makes sense why these technological creatures exist in a seemingly prehistoric world, whereas this obviously has some more magical origins, but I was just getting that vibe through this. And what I really liked about this actually, that again was slightly different, is our main character. So in previous iterations of stories like this, for example The Bridge Kingdom, the main character is the assassin. Like, she has been trained, she has been honed to perform this task. Our main character in this, like, she has a very strong can-do attitude, but she is not skilled, she is not trained, and damn, she is just trying her best. And it's not that she's unwilling to be any of these things. Her father never cared about her enough to bother investing in her and to give her her any skills. So when she travels to this strange land, she takes it upon herself to be better, to grow stronger, to learn new things. And we see that happening throughout this book, but she still is not like Selena Sardarthian, you know? Like, she is still struggling and just trying her best. And I really like to see that represented, because I feel like we have the super skilled female main character represented a lot, and then we also have more diplomatic, like politically minded, pacifist main characters represented quite a lot. But I don't feel like we have a lot of characters who are just kind of doing their best and trying to do the thing, but they're very much not there yet. The sexual tension in here was fire. It was the kind of book where for the longest time literally nothing happened, but if they were in the same room together, if they looked at each other, I had butterflies. I was rooting for it. And we all know that I prefer a slow burn. Like, I do not want us getting together. I don't want anything happening in at least the first half of the book, and this is a chunky one, and I feel like it's only in the last like 200 pages that we even start to be getting anywhere, which was perfect for me. But I was desperate for just a touch, like their hands touched and I was like keeling over in excitement. So I feel like the romantic tension in here, Devney Perry absolutely nailed, which obviously I would assume that that would be her strength, being a more contemporary romance author. But when you get a fantasy romance that not only has amazing chemistry, but a really good plot as well, a plot that took me by surprise, that is really something. We knew that something was going on. Throughout the entire beginning of this, the way the main character is described, like you just know that there's something going on with her, but I had no idea what it was, and I still have really no idea what it is. But the way that we started getting reveals like stacked at the end of this book about the world, about the plot, about the reasons why the monsters are behaving the way that they are, shocked. I'm so desperate for book 2, and I feel like I also read this at an excellent time because The Rights of the Starling is going to be published in, I think, April. I missed it off my anticipated releases, which you're gonna see soon because I've already filmed and scheduled that video. But trust me, I am desperate for book 2 in this series. Loved it. 5 stars. 10 out of 10 would recommend. So those are my fantasy romance recommendations from everything I've read that was published in 2025. Down in my comments, let me know if you've read any of these and what you thought of them, and also leave me some 2025 recommendations, maybe based on my enjoyment of the books in this list. Let me know any that you think that I've missed that I'm gonna really love. I have a couple on my TBR that I just didn't manage to get to before the end of the year. Like, I'm really excited to read Windweaver by Julie Johnson. I've heard mixed things about Metal Slinger by Rachel Snyder, so I don't know which way I'm gonna go on that, but those are a couple that I've had my eye on that I think could be interesting. So let me know what you've read in 2025 that you loved and would really recommend, so that I know what to prioritize going forward. And if you guys would like to let me know you were here but you don't feel like you have anything to say, leave me a bird emoji. I don't think we specifically have a sparrow, but leave me a bird emoji for Shield of Sparrows by Devney Perry. But aside from that, guys, I hope that you have enjoyed this video. I hope that you found these recommendations useful. If you did, please don't forget to like this video if you liked it, and subscribe if you wanna. If you head to my description box, you'll find a link to my Goodreads, my Instagram, and my Patreon if you want to follow me on any of those. That's it from me today, guys. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you will go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.